and welcome to Researcher Revealed. I'm Dr. Rosalind Austin, host of the podcast that goes behind just the name on a publication or conference proceeding to find out a little bit more about a researcher. Now, Abigail Miller had a great education and a great start around some research skills, doing some really interesting research around sexual health and well-being there in America. And she made the decision to open up her own company and to use those research skills in a slightly different way, but to still use those skills to amplify and support other researchers who are doing research within that sector of sexual health and wellness. You should definitely give this episode a listen because I think you'll find it very, very fascinating. I know I did. Hello and welcome to Researcher Revealed. On this week's podcast, we have a very exciting guest all the way from sunny California in America, Abigail Miller. Abigail, can you tell everybody who you are and just a little bit about what you're doing currently?
Sure. So thanks so much for having me, Rosalind. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Abigail Miller. I am the founder of Wellness Marketing Reports, which is a bespoke marketing agency for sexual health and women's health industry companies. I got into research when I was studying at Emory University. I studied psychology and interdisciplinary research, at which point I conducted America's largest study on parental decision-making in infant circumcision. And then I took those research skills into my own career and business by running research about the sexual health and women's health industries, which are very nuanced and unusual industries to market in. And I continue to use those skills with my clients today to help bring them the best results in their marketing efforts.
Oh, amazing. I cannot wait to dive into some of your research and your research journey. But before we do that, very quickly, we need to do the rapid Researcher 11. Are you ready?
I guess so.
Don't worry, it's nothing detailed or scary. It's just little quick questions.
Right.
Are you a Windows or a Mac user?
Mac.
Oh, okay. Tea or coffee?
Tea, right in front of me.
Which tea are you drinking today? What flavor?
This is an English breakfast.
Ooh, nice. I'm in a...
Go ahead.
I've got red rooibos.
Okay, I don't know that one. I was gonna say it might not be as English as the English breakfast you're using. It's probably from some big pack at Walmart, but we call it English breakfast.
Perfect. Oh, too funny. When you're writing or planning or coming up with a new idea, working on some research, do you prefer to work in an environment that is silent, or do you have music playing in the background?
I am actually a singer, so having music makes me instinctively start singing. So I need quiet or music that I'm very unfamiliar with.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And where do you tend to work? At home or an office?
Usually at home. Yeah, I work very odd hours. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and say, "Oh, I forgot to do this thing." So offices aren't always open at that time.
Fair enough. I think the home office is a new revolution. It was there before COVID, but COVID definitely amped it up. And it can, like you say, if you're a person who isn't a 9-to-5 worker, then you can still get stuff done. And it makes you appear much more productive than everybody else, because when they wake up and they're like, oh my goodness, everything's all done.
Yeah, someone was sending me emails all night. She is so dedicated.
Exactly. Little do they know the truth that you sleep all day, but we won't tell that secret.
Yeah.
So speaking about that sort of stuff, what time of day would you say, not hour, but generically, would you say you're most productive?
Definitely in the evening. During the day, I love to be outside, enjoy the sun, play sports. So once it gets dark, I kind of wind down. I say, okay, I got my energy out. Now I can sit down and do some work.
Perfect. I love it. The next question, I think we're going to have to adapt a little bit, but I'm going to ask it as it is, and then we'll see, is do you have a favorite referencing management system? Like, so when you're writing up a paper for your research, like, did you
Mhm.
have a system that you like to use?
I didn't. The only real research system I've used is Qualtrics, and I just imported that data into Sheets and Google Docs.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. What about like making images, figures, graphs, stuff like that, or like project plans? Do you have a favorite tool for that?
Yeah, so Qualtrics did that as well.
Yeah.
And then same thing, you can put the data into Google Sheets and it will make pretty versions for you. Now, even you could put it into Claude, and I'm sure other AI platforms do the same thing, but you can just give Claude the data and it will make something beautiful with the like little paintings around it or whatever you want.
I know it's mad how much easier data viz is nowadays. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. Even just
Um,
in the last few years, it's changed so much.
Definitely. Right, almost there. What about a favorite snack at your desk?
Ooh. I can't say I have one that I always go to. I'm trying to think if I'm blanking, but I don't think so.
So
I
not a snacker or too many to choose from?
just nothing in particular. When I'm
Okay.
hungry, like 2 nights ago, I made rice pudding, and yesterday I was snacking on the rice pudding all day. So just
Fair enough.
whatever I have around.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Cool. When it comes to planning and organizing, now whether that's a project or your work calendar, are you a pen and paper person or are you a digital tool person?
Digital. I've actually had one to-do list since seventh grade, and I've updated this to-do list almost every single day since seventh grade. And I would be completely lost without it. It's where I keep track of every single thing I need to get done.
Oh my word, that's amazing. I love a to-do list. Have you heard of bullet journaling?
I've heard of it, but I haven't really done it. My
Okay.
Google Doc to-do list has just been it works for me, so don't fix
Fair
what ain't
enough.
broke. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I like bullet journaling because I feel like it's an advanced level of a to-do list.
Okay.
Because
Maybe I'll have to try it out.
instead of it being binary, so either you've done it or you've not done
Mhm.
it, you can like half do it, you can migrate it, you can,
Mm.
so there's other things you can do, and it still is like a to-do list, but yeah, but anyway, I could geek out about that stuff forever.
Okay. Well, I often do half do it or move it to a different day, but at the end of the day,
Okay.
that's the master, and whatever it says will eventually get done.
Oh, amazing. I love it. I'm the same. Right, two more questions to go. Is what book are you currently reading?
I'm not currently reading a book.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Well,
I
okay, so if you're not
I'm
reading a
more
book, favorite like show that you're watching.
okay. So I was gonna say I'm more of a listener. Like I listen to
Oh,
podcasts.
that
Yeah.
counts. Listening
Recently,
counts as reading.
yeah. My mom sent me an episode of what it's called uh Hot Smart Rich.
Hmm.
It's from I think it's I don't want to say something wrong and someone listening is going to be like, that's not who it is. But it's some celebrity started this podcast and my mom sent me a particular episode that stood out to her. So
Okay.
I listened to that.
What I'll ask you to do, Abigail, is if you can send me the actual like link for the podcast, then
Sure.
what I'll do is I'll add that into the episode description with all of your other sort of like how people can find you and dig into like your
Okay.
research and stuff. So we'll list it as a resource if you chuck that over to me so that I
Sounds good.
also don't link the wrong one because I'm sure if you Googled rich, beautiful, and powerful, you'd end up with quite a collection.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking for it. I'll send it to you.
Perfect. Amazing. Right. Last question. Who is a researcher that you admire?
I admire Justin Lay Miller from the Kinsey Institute. I have been listening to his podcast since I was in high school. I love that he makes sexual health research very accessible and understandable, but he really always comes at it from a research perspective and using data to drive his conversations.
Oh, give us that podcast link as well. That sounds amazing.
I love his podcast. I will send it to you.
Oh, definitely, please do. And I'll put it in the episode description so everybody else out there as well. I love it when you
Great.
find a good podcast like that where it links that thing, so research that you're so passionate about, but it then starts to talk about like how it happened or whatnot. That's a lot of the books that I read as well.
Yeah.
Right. Diving into it, because I think your answer there was actually a perfect segue into what I hope to talk to you about. So, in the introduction, psychology as a bachelor degree, or did you go higher than that?
Bachelor's. Both of my
Okay,
degrees from Emory were bachelor's.
we're bachelor's degrees. Okay. And then through those degrees, you started to develop a keen interest around sexual health and wellness research. So tell me about like thinking back to when you were in that lecture hall or whatnot. What sort of drew you to wanting to focus in on sexual health research?
So I actually was interested in studying sexual health long before college.
Oh,
It's
okay.
yeah, it started I was on a month-long service trip in Tanzania in high school
Okay.
when I was 16, and most of it was focused on community building. We were helping teach English and build a school community. Um, but towards the end of the trip, we got to meet a very remote Maasai community.
Mm-hmm.
And up until then, I had never been exposed to any different types of relationship and family structures outside of the traditional Western culture that we have in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. But these Maasai tribes were polygamous, meaning that a man would take multiple wives. And when I first heard about this, my instinct was that this is so anti-feminist, it's so wrong, and I was almost outraged. But as we spoke more with the women in the community, we were speaking through a translator, granted, but
Yeah.
as we heard their story more, it became clear to me that the women actually really admire that family structure. It gives them a lot of independence. They each have their own dwelling unit, whereas men don't have their own property. They just bounce between their women. And it also helped them with child support because the women would all rear their children together. So it was not like all women were
Okay.
constantly responsible for taking care of their child. Um,
Right.
and it also gave them a sense of community and friendship. They really admired their co-wives. So after this, it really opened my mind to the idea that, hey, in Western culture, we have been told this is what relationships are supposed to look like, this is what family is supposed to look like. But there are other ways of going about relationships and families that can be just as fulfilling for different people. And
Oh,
then from there, I dove more into how and why we're taught the specific relationship types that we are in our culture, and by proxy, what's missing from that type of education. And then I got down a whole rabbit hole of there are all these things, even just about basic health information that we're not taught, let alone different opportunities for other types of relationships that might suit other people better. Yeah, so that was in high school. And then I told myself I was either gonna go to the best music school or study sex and relationships. And then I got into a great music school and went there. And a few years later, I was like, you know what? Something in my brain is nagging me. I still have this intellectual
interesting.
curiosity, all of these
Mm-hmm.
questions I want to answer. So that's when I switched over to Emory, and I chose Emory knowing that they had the interdisciplinary research department, and I wanted to do research in an unconventional field like that.
Very cool. Okay, so just to clear a few things up, I've never heard, I mean, I've talked to people from all over the world around research. I've never heard of a university having an interdisciplinary research department. What
Yeah.
is that about? That sounds wicked.
It's amazing. So at Emory, it's actually one of their smallest departments. My year had only, I think, 8 of us in it. But it's basically if what you're interested in studying doesn't really fit into any particular department, you can join the interdisciplinary research department where you learn to combine research methods from other departments and study your own thing. So my research was related to social psychology, human
Mm-hmm.
behavior, human
Mm-hmm.
anatomy, and I conducted my own research related to all of these different fields instead of having to choose just one department.
What an amazing, like, interesting model for training research, but also,
Yeah.
like, what a great foundation you had.
Yeah,
That's
it really was.
fabulous.
Yeah, and now in my career, I really do feel that I have an ability to talk to people and feel confident talking to people in all different industries and paths because we were taught to think in a bunch of different modes instead of just learning one model of thinking.
I think like well done, Emory University, because I
Agreed.
think it's such an important skill within research. I mean, I was at a conference this past weekend in Berlin around like digital health and cardiology, and I found it really interesting that pretty much all the speakers were like, we need to have more interdisciplinary and intersector stuff, but we don't know
Yeah.
how to do it. And I'm just like going, I know.
Yeah, yeah, they should go talk to Emory. They did an amazing job.
Very cool. I really like that. Okay, so you started to hint about it there. So from your project based on a service trip to a remote, um, sorry, excuse me, tribe in, you said Tanzania, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What did you then do for your university-based research project?
Sure. Hold on. I'm trying to face in a direction where I have like half of my face is like glowing in the sun. Is this
I
better or
like the
no?
glow personally.
Okay, I'm just trying to make it consistent, not like a just one eyeball, but okay, this is what it's gonna be for now.
You're
Um,
fine.
yes, so the research I ended up doing, well, I'll say when I chose Emory, I knew that I wanted to study something in the field of human sexuality.
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly what my research study would be.
Okay.
Um, we can get into later the story behind how I ended up choosing the study. But the study that I ended up doing was America's largest study on parental decision making in infant circumcision. And for those listeners who are not in the US, they might think this sounds really random. But that is because in the US, there are astronomically high levels of infant circumcision, meaning cutting the foreskin of infant boys as soon as they're born. At a time, it was, 90+% of boys had this procedure in infancy. Now it's gone down a little bit to between 65 and 70%. Um, but these rates are far more than double most other developed countries in the
Yeah.
world. And given that the medical system is more or less similar between the US and other countries, it stood out to me, why are we doing this at such high levels here and not in other countries when there's not significant scientific indication that it's healthier to do that or not? So that's what my study surveyed and interviewed parents to find out.
Okay, so survey and interview.
Yes.
How did you end up like like were you leading on the project or were you part of the project team? Because that's quite an achievement at a bachelor's level to be the largest survey in America around
You.
this percent, like full stop, let alone this under-researched area. So tell me a little bit more like about how you landed there and how you made that achievement.
Yeah, so I was completely leading the study. The only other person involved was my
Oh,
thesis advisor, Dr. Risdord. And he helped, he actually worked in both the interdisciplinary research and the philosophy department. So he
okay.
was helping, 7 or 8 students at a time with their thesis, but he was always my sounding board, my
Okay.
northern star guiding me. Here's your next step. Here's your next step.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was the one leading the project. Um, what was the other part of that question of how it became
So
the largest study?
that's how you were leading the project. So
Yeah.
how did you end up like this being your first major research study, doing your bachelor's degree, so not master's level, not PhD
Mhm.
level. How did you end up accelerating it to become like the largest study in America on it?
Okay,
Because
yeah.
that's an amazing achievement.
Well, thank you. I'll have to be humble here and admit that this is an extremely under-researched area, which is why it
Okay.
it really fascinated me because I was thinking, you know, 70% of all American boys are having this procedure, and yet there's been no study that even asked 200 of the parents why they made this decision. So all I had to do was ask 215 parents, and this now made it the largest study in America, which is hard
Well,
to believe, but it wasn't the easiest thing getting 215 parents to do it. I got some funding from the university. I applied for grants and they for some reason chose me to get some money. That way I can incentivize some parents to participate. And then, yeah, we got 215 parents to take the survey, which
yeah.
was, I forget exactly how many questions long. This was a few years ago by
Well,
now,
you've
but
very kindly given us the link to your study. So I think rather
yeah,
than diving into the details around that project, I think like again, everybody watching or listening, check out the link and then you can read about her study in detail. But I
right.
think like yes, it might be an under-researched area, but don't sell yourself short. I've seen people's PhDs who didn't recruit 200 people.
Really. Well,
Really.
the funding was a huge help, and I'm glad that I got to offer some incentive to the parents because I think it is so important. So
Yeah.
their perspective was
No.
very valuable. Yeah.
I think it's really, really cool. Okay, so you did that, massive achievements, like getting some grant funding, high recruitment rates. So then what happened next? Because I know you don't have a PhD. So, I mean, it sounds to me like listening to your story, I'm like, "Whoa, okay. So now what happens?" Because I'm very curious because you sound very much like you're on a trajectory towards master's PhD professorship.
I wondered that. And after I finished my thesis, I did seriously consider applying for a Rhodes Scholarship or some other further degree. Um, but you know, my dad spent 13 years in college, and I was like,
Okay.
you know what? I have a feeling if I start this right now, it's never gonna end. And I don't see when I'll ever start a career instead of just staying in higher education forever.
Yeah.
So it was partly that, and partly also just I was excited to start my own career and have a lifestyle that was not in a classroom because I hadn't had that in a very long time. So yeah,
That's
I
amazing.
finished. Thanks. So I finished college actually early,
Hmm.
and I took a couple months to travel in Europe
Oh, lovely.
and ponder what I really wanted to do next.
Hmm.
And I decided I wanted to move to California and start a business, and that's what I did.
Okay. So, wow. What an incredible like decision and journey and like so interesting. So,
Thanks.
before we start talking, well, no, it is sort of talking about your business. So when you made that decision, sitting probably somewhere beautiful and lovely in Europe, um, to come back to America, to move to California and start your own business, was that you shutting the door on research, or did you bring research with you?
Yeah, I brought research with me. I was
Okay.
always interested in research, and there was a part of me that was sad to leave it behind. So it
Mm,
wasn't like I'm done with this. That sucked. It was more of that was great, but I'm ready to move on with my life. So how can
Okay.
I include these skills going forward?
Okay. So you're going to take your skills with you.
Yes.
So what have you done?
Yes. So, um, while I was starting my new business, which I guess I'll give a little context so people
Yeah,
know what we're
yeah,
talking about. So now I'm running a marketing agency for women's health companies and sexual health companies. And as I was getting started with that business, I was actually in a business mentorship group. So still holding on to that education.
yeah.
Um, and that group taught a process of business startup where you do market research before starting your business, which I mean, who
Okay.
would have thought actually? It sounds quite obvious hearing it out loud, but yeah, learning about the market can actually be a huge help in
Yeah,
starting a business,
yeah.
meeting a network to start working with. So I was very excited when I heard about that process because of
Mm-hmm.
my research background, my interest in research. So I really took that to the next level. And I ended up conducting a whole another little study as I was starting my
Oh,
business, where I interviewed 63 founders, directors, and CEOs from women's health and sexual wellness companies to hear
okay.
about the challenges, strategies, success stories that they had found through their entrepreneurship journey in their own
Yeah.
businesses. That way I can A, meet a bunch of people, make some connections, but
Yep.
B, learn what it really takes to find success in that industry and what I
Okay.
could potentially offer to other newer companies who are trying to find growth in that space.
Wow. Okay, so you're still using those foundational skills that you learned in university and through your
Yeah.
various different research positions, but now you've sort of just shifted them a little bit. You're still keeping that health focus, and you're now instead trying to figure out how you can utilize the very powerful tools in research in order to be able to set you and your company up better. But I'm guessing as well, likely then, if you had a conversation with a given company
Mhm.
that and they're like, yep, I want you to market, you've also then able to use some of those research skills to learn a good way how to market that thing, because I can only imagine how challenging, like, so even being a nurse by background, and I hang around nurses and doctors all the time, and it's very culturally different. So I was trained in Canada, and like sexual health was part of our education.
Mhm.
And like in England, you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's
And
very closed box and
Mhm.
whatnot. So there's differences between cultures. So I can only imagine like how challenging uh, being able to work with these companies and to do work with them and to research ways and strategies to increase the impact of their product, increase the impact of their research has several tricky components to it.
yeah, that's 100%
You're like,
accurate.
yeah, and
I mean, yes, so it's interesting that you point out the differences in culture based on geographic location, because now so much of marketing is done online. So even in countries like Canada, you mentioned, where sexual education might be more valued than in
yeah,
lots of parts in the US, and it sounds England as well. Um, at the end of the day, we were all beholden to the rules of Meta and Google, who are very, very restrictive of not only sexual health, but even promoting regular health and wellness products. I say regular as if sexual health isn't regular, and it is, but non-sexual health and wellness products. So yeah, I mean, even in a country like Canada, you can only post certain things. You can't even say the words of body parts like vagina and penis in a medical context. I saw recently there's an organization called Censorship with the capital HER, and they did their own very similar white paper report about the censorship of the women's health industry. And it showed one post that had been restricted was just education about vaginal cancer. I mean, how much more health centric can it get? I mean, that's not sexual at all. It's about health. And then next to it was a post from Playboy of a naked girl with blood dripping on her face. And that one was not taken down, but the vaginal cancer education was taken down. So all of this to say there is a ton of censorship around sexual health and women's health in digital marketing, regardless of where the company is based geographically.
I do not envy your task at all, because I cannot even imagine how complicated it is, and how, you know, like you say, like the work that you're trying to do is, it's such a hard word. Like, I'm struggling to come up with the right word, because it isn't unusual. It's normal. Everybody has sexual organs. There's, right? And yet you can kind of understand it from, like, let's Meta, Google, whoever. You can understand it from the online community's point of view, because they're trying to make it a safe and secure place.
Mm-hmm.
But then you see examples like what you just described, where you can have like, somebody can put out a YouTube video of a travel adventure person, and the female who's being front and center and talking about how beautiful the scenery and can be in an itty bitty thong bikini, and that's fine. But like you said, if you then talking about a health issue to deal with breast cancer or vaginal or, anything like that, then all of a sudden now you're getting banned.
Yeah, exactly. There's a phrase that circles around the industry. I don't remember who said it. It probably says in my white paper, whoever was first to quote it, but it's you can use sex to promote anything other than sex. So think like a burger shop can have, a sexy girl on their door, and this is okay to promote burgers with sex appeal. But even products that are meant to improve your sexual health and sexual experiences, then you can't talk about sex or use sex appeal to promote those topics.
Whoa, that's crazy.
But it makes sense, right? When you think about it, how often are you seeing sexy girls in little bikinis promoting products that have nothing to do with health, but then you can't use even medical terminology to promote sexual health?
Well, it's like starting to get close to Christmas, so all like the fragrance ads are out, and like it's either a very sexy woman or a man without a shirt on.
Yeah, exactly.
For like fragrance.
Yeah, you can use sex appeal to promote anything other than sexual health.
I like that quote. That's really powerful. But then I'd say I'd take it a step further, and I wonder, it's not just about promoting it, but it's even just talking about it.
Yeah.
Or do you think that's a bit too far?
No, that's definitely true. So, in the digital marketing and advertising world, there are different rules for what you can post and then what you can advertise. The difference being advertising is putting ad spend behind the content. So Meta will say there are certain things that you can post just for your own followers, but they're going to suppress your account to any outside people. Um, and but if you wanted to advertise, you can't advertise that at all, because I mean, by definition, advertising is showing yourself to outside people. And even in Google ads as well, you can't mention the name of any prescription
Mm,
in an ad without some very specific approvals from them, which in the sexual health
interesting.
industry is never going to happen. So if I can just give a quick example, one of the companies that I work with, they invented and now sell a product that is um, it's a drug-free erectile dysfunction solution, and it's clinically proven to help men enhance their erections without any medication. So we would
Wow.
want to say, hey, there's this drug-free option that if
Mm,
you're struggling in the bedroom, you can use this instead of using XYZ uh, drug name. But we
yeah.
can't say those drug names, even though it's clinically proven to be a drug-free solution. So there's one
Wow.
example.
Wow, that's so interesting. And I think like that brings the research back into it again because,
Mhm.
if that product has gone through clinical studies and has had comparison against, the typically prescribed medications
Mhm.
for that condition of erectile dysfunction, then wow, that's blown my mind a little bit.
Yeah. And then it gets back into how much money is Big Pharma giving to Google to instill these rules because uh, it's encouraging people to promote drugs only, and then you can't promote drug-free alternatives. So it's telling the public, buy these drugs, buy these drugs, buy these drugs, but nobody can promote any non-drug alternative.
Oh man, I'm learning so much. Um,
Great.
so, so you kind of now are, you've shifted your focus a little bit, but even in shifting that focus, just to go back to your like overall story here. Um, so even when you're setting up this new wellness marketing company that's specifically focused around sexual health, you still conducted a little bit of like a little study that you turned into a white paper.
Yes.
So your interests, like if I looked at your bio, you seem to be very focused on sexual health, but you have got a leaning towards women's health more so than men's health, if I can be so bold. Do you plan or hope to continue sort of keeping both of those streams going? So, like, still dabble and do some independent research yourself? Or are you going to like funnel down and really focus on like building those collaborations to existing health tech or wellness groups in order to raise their research and raise their product?
Yeah. So marketing really is, or it should be, maybe for some marketers it's not, but it should be research in and of itself because you need
Okay.
to find out what is going to speak to the market. Are people going to
Yep.
respond better to this image or this image and this headline or this headline? And what are our top 20 competitors posting this week that made their accounts get more views than our account? All of these are research questions, and it takes research skills and data to analyze different points in order to find out what can we do better. So I'm using research skills in most of our decision making that we do for our companies. We don't want to be just randomly, aimlessly trying different things. We want to be focusing our efforts on things that are proven with data to be effective. So, yeah, definitely research isn't my main focus at the moment, but
Mhm.
it's required in order to be successful at what I do.
Well, my suspicion was you were going to say something like that from like reading about you and like looking into what you're doing and stuff. But I think within like and this is probably my bias. So like I spend most of my time hanging out with clinicians, and there's a real belief maybe that if you want to continue doing research or you like research as a clinician, your option is either to try and like be a part of a lab or be like a clinical researcher or be involved in like um, bigger research delivery studies in a hospital, or you leave a hospital and you go into the academic world, because there's this belief that in order to be involved in research, it either needs to be in that university or hospital environment. And I think it's, again, really important to shine a light on somebody like you that is actually like, no, you can use research in loads of different ways and still have really good impact on people's health.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
I totally
Oh,
agree.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's such
No,
a hard thing with
I agree. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, no, it's really, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. I've just looked at the time and oh my word, it is flying by. We're already like almost at 45 minutes. So I
Wow.
just thought I'd like to give you the opportunity to share a little bit about with what you're doing and those research skills that you're using to try and enhance and promote these clinically proven tools to improve somebody's wellness or their sexual health. Um, what are you working on right now?
Yeah. So one great company that's doing a lot of research in their own right is called FirmTech. They
Mhm.
were one of my first clients at Wellness Marketing Reports, and we've grown together. They're doing amazing things. But I'll just share this as an example of how
Okay.
research can help research help research.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
So
perfect.
great. So with them, like I said, all the decisions we make are based on market research and competitor analysis, which is researching what are others doing.
Yeah.
And we're doing all of this research to support and promote their clinically proven solutions. So I don't want to give away too much, mostly because I'm not a doctor and I don't want to phrase their findings wrong. But just as a summary of what they do, they have created the first erection monitor, which is a small wearable device that tracks the duration and firmness of erections. And some people might be saying, why would you want to do this? That's so
Yeah.
random. Well, let me tell you why. Erectile health is actually a leading indicator of cardiovascular health. It's not just associated, it's a leading indicator. So if someone's nocturnal erections, which are the um, uncontrolled erections you have during REM sleep every night, if those decrease by 50%, you have a much higher chance of having a heart attack in the next 2 years. So the CEO of the company, Dr. Elliot Justin, was challenged to create a way to actually objectively track people's erections. That way we
Oh,
can assess
wow.
their cardiovascular health, but also assess their sexual health, sexual performance. And now, like I said, they've even created non-tech integrated solutions that are just little mechanical tools that are clinically proven to improve people's erectile health and functioning. So if anyone is interested to hear more about the amazing research they're doing, you can check out the science page at myfirmtech.com. You'll see they've found incredible, amazing things. They've tracked over 130,000 erections with their monitors.
What?
They've discovered things like uh, the leading cause of erectile dysfunction is
Mm.
not what the doctors thought it was, and they were able to find that by actually objectively tracking erections. They have saved people's lives by men found that their erections decreased and then they went to a cardiologist and got the help that they needed. Yeah, they're doing
Wow.
amazing research and I'm very happy and proud to be using a different type of research to help promote the great work that they're doing.
Wow, that's really cool. And like what a neat way to do exactly what you said, is like you're using research to help promote their research in order to get these devices out in the world so that more people can have that promotative and preventative action in health. And I think for me, with digital tech, like that's one of the things that excites me the most about digital health technologies, is it's no longer let's wait and see if something happens, but actually through the biosensors or, this firm tech device, you are now able to start to be able to, using that data, predict and identify these things before they become a problem. And so you can then, like, for those men who use the device and it identified that there was a cardiovascular issue in their health, I can only imagine that either meant they got started on some heart drugs, or maybe even if there was blockages in their heart, they had those fixed without, because I haven't dived that deep into looking into the paper. But that then means you're not waiting for them to have a heart attack to have to come to emergency services. You prevent that emergency from ever. That's wow.
Exactly. And that's why this is so important to be able to promote, because it's literally life-saving. But because the device goes on the penis, it's very hard to get past all of Meta and Google's rules about what you are and aren't allowed to say and promote on their platform. So yeah, it's a very interesting puzzle trying to get it out there.
Yeah. Well, I think if anybody can figure it out with your like research skills and like all of the achievements that you've had so far within like the research that you did, whether it was in high school with the Malawi tribe or whether it was with the big survey in America about infant circumcision, I'm already following you on socials, but I'm definitely beginning to keep an eye on you.
Thank you.
I think, just trying to think of the time, I think my last question I'd like to ask you is a bit of a big question, because like in listening to you and your journey, it seems like for whatever reason, you've always been incredibly interested and passionate, whether it was that initial episode with that Malawi tribe and that real cultural, I don't want to use the word conflict, but that cultural difference from what you were used to really sparked your desire to learn more, to be curious, to have that curiosity be data driven. So, what would you say to somebody who's out there and listening and who hasn't had that moment, about whether it's about sexual health or whether it's about hearts or whether it's about somebody's big toe, but they're listening to this because they're like, this research thing, I just keep hearing more and more about it in the news and I'm curious about it. Why should somebody do an amount of research training?
Yeah, big question. You're right about that. Um, I have two answers to this. The
Okay.
first answer is just from a logical standpoint, like I was saying about my business. Um, Understanding research methods will help you be better than anyone else who does your job. And I'm trying to think of an exception because I don't like making bold statements that are not fully true. But I'm thinking even in the music industry, being able to analyze a song and seeing what made this song successful and this one not, or what made this artist's posts go viral on TikTok when this artist had a seemingly better song that didn't do as well. Being able to analyze and create data points and research that question will allow you to be more successful even in that industry. So if it works in that industry, I can't really think of an example. Just being able to analyze something and find out how can you be the best, that will allow you to succeed in whatever you do. So there's the logical answer.
Okay.
My other answer is, why would you not want to be able to ask any big question and find out the answer in a way that other people can't? I mean, it now, especially, I mean, with all of the tools that are available at our fingertips 24/7, it's tempting to just ask ChatGPT, oh, whatever your big question is, what's the answer to this? But in reality, there's so much that actually requires real investigation, and that can be such a fun process to be the first person to learn something. I remember that feeling so vividly when I was doing the study about circumcision decision making.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned there was a huge correlation between what insurance coverage someone had, what education someone had, what their doctor told them. And until now, nobody knew. Why are parents in the US continuing to make this decision that parents across all other developed countries are not making? And in that moment, I felt so powerful. I was like, I have the answer that until now, nobody has known,
Yeah.
and it's been afflicting our entire country for centuries. So if you want to have that kind of moment where there's something you're curious about and you can be the first person to really look into it in a way that it might not have been before, I highly encourage you to take that opportunity.
Oh my word, I have got goosebumps. That was like so powerful,
Thank
Abigail.
you.
That's beautiful. And I'm going to challenge you because I'm going to take it one more step forward.
Okay.
So in research, especially health research, I think I read a paper maybe a couple of months ago that estimates that moment of power, of incredible experience of being like, I'm the one who's discovered this thing,
Mhm.
is that within a lot of like even life-changing research, it can take at best 18 years for that research to be implemented, for it to be adopted, for it to be integrated into society, healthcare, whatever,
Mhm.
right? And I think listening to you and how you're using those research skills and you're aligning your passion around sexual health and wellness in order to work with these other researchers to shorten that gap, to make their findings more accessible. That's a huge gap that so many researchers could really deal with. Like we have lectures all the time about how to increase your impact, but nobody talks about things like marketing or dissemination is limited to writing a paper, but it's about so much more than that now. So I think challenging one, but your piece is also really important, and it'd be really interesting to see these companies that you work with, whether or not that research lag time is shorter for them because of the work that you've been doing with them.
I wonder. That's a great question. And it's such an
Maybe you
important
should keep
point.
some data on it.
Maybe I should. Yeah. But I remember that feeling when I finished my thesis and I was like, okay, now what? Like I found the answer. I know why. I have thoughts on this topic, but is this gonna change what all the other parents are doing? Probably not. And I think what you said is completely right, that marketing is such a big piece of it. And it is kind of sad that we have to think, how can we use marketing tactics in order to get this information across? But everything in the world is marketing now. I read a quote yesterday that was, the only entertainment you can have without advertisement now is a book. And it's true. You open social media and
It's
there's
true.
ads. TV, there's ads.
Yep.
Spotify, podcasts,
Ads.
there's ads.
Yep.
Everything that you consume, you're being sold to. That's just
Mm.
unfortunately the way that the world works right now. So I think researchers maybe it would be in their best interest, fortunately or unfortunately, to hop on that train and think, how can we use the digital marketing tactics that are today's world in order to promote our big ideas, because that's how all other big ideas are getting into people's heads now.
Well, and I think too, like, is it marketing? Like you're using marketing tools, but is actually what you're doing dissemination and awareness and impact,
Yeah.
and those terms are more acceptable within more academic and clinical research circles. Everybody wants to be able to demonstrate impact,
Sure.
right? But
hmm
very few people use the tools in which impact is created, i.e., social media.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way of phrasing it, and I think you're right. And we can see that in there are doctors and researchers like Justin Lay Miller who's promoting research through his podcast. That's a way that makes it entertaining, but it
Yep.
gets it out there, and he has a social media to promote it, and he does events and whatever. So yeah, technically he's promoting it, but what he's really trying to do is just disseminate this important information. I know Dr. Mike is a huge, huge YouTuber,
Yeah.
millions of followers and
Yeah.
subscribers. And his goal is the same thing, just to educate people about how to stay healthy. So if we can think
Yeah.
about it in that way and just think, how can we leverage the tools that are available to us in order to make this new information accessible to those who might
Yeah.
benefit from it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be the way.
Beautifully said, Abigail.
Thank you.
Right. I'm going to let you run. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to join me on Researcher Revealed. Thank you for sharing all about your journey and the research that you've done and how you're transferring those skills to basically transform so many other people's research. It was really fascinating, really interesting to have a chat with you.
Thank you, Rosalind. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Don't go away. Up next, we have the top 3 takeaways from this week's podcast by Dr. Rosalind Austin. I'm so glad that Abigail reached out to me. Actually, more than that, I'm really glad that she agreed to share her story. It was fascinating to hear about how her early days in high school through to quite a strong project in her university actually gave her really strong foundation in research and fueled a passion for this area of health. I found it really fascinating to see, though, that rather than her deciding to develop that and do more education, that she actually identified another really big gap that is talked about in research, but very few people do anything about it. That transition between, okay, the clinical research study has shown it to be good, helpful, beneficial, but then that often very long gap before it actually starts getting utilized. So I found it really interesting to dive into that a little bit more and to see how, like, her own company that she's developed is partnering with researchers who have clinically researched a given device, a given thing within the sexual health and wellness area in order to hopefully decrease that time period between study and implementation, but also to raise impact and to help with the dissemination of that research project. For me, my top takeaways from this conversation with Abigail. Number one, there are more career pathways to research than even I knew being in research. And I found it really, really fascinating. I think she's sort of the second person now who has done a similar thing where they've taken their research experience and they've converted it into an independent career business pathway. And I think, again, like, there's within research sectors, maybe it's just the forums that I'm hanging out in, and the online social areas that I'm hanging out in. Like most people, especially in health research, believe that there's two career pathways, really. Well, there's a third one, but we only talk about it in whispers, that being academic, hospital, or increasingly that industry sector. And that's often talked about in hushed whispers, but I think more and more there's more individuals who are starting to dabble in that in order to actually progress their careers. Or maybe I'm just becoming more aware of it. Not sure. But I think, it's an important point to remember is that there's lots of ways that you can use your research training to develop a research career. It doesn't just have to be becoming an independent researcher or becoming a professor or becoming a clinical researcher or a clinical scientist. There's lots of other options that you can do with your career. And the second one I quite like, and I mean, I kind of knew it already, but I think it's an important thing to remember is that actually research is everywhere, and she's now taking those research skills that she developed doing some really interesting work around the relationships with the Malawi tribe, then how they made polygamy work and the differences in culture around relationships, all the way to her the largest ever study in America around infant male circumcision. She's taken those skills and she's found a way to repurpose them because research is everywhere. So she's using those research principles to guide and drive her business so that she can help other researchers who are doing other studies get the word out about their research. And I thought that was a really interesting way of using those skills. So a previous episode with Robert Hall, he talked about using his research skills and understanding the forms of governance in order to be able to, again, try and lessen that gap between research study and implementation. But in doing it through creating a consultancy where he's actually helping people guide them through that process, because he learned that process as part of his PhD. Where Abigail is using those skills to actually figure out ways to help increase the dissemination, and she uses the term marketing around a given research study or around a given intervention so that it becomes more publicly aware, and then there's a better probability of it getting adopted, it becoming part of policies, all of those things. And I think increasingly, my generation of researchers anyway, we are being more encouraged and to some degree supported to do our own level of social media dissemination and, putting out posts on LinkedIn or Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever the platform is about, our research journey, our research achievements. But she saw a gap. I mean, like, actually, if I can learn how to utilize those platforms better, then I can actually help those researchers increase their impact. And so it was a really different way of looking at it and a different way of looking at dissemination, because I think the truth is if you're going to increase your impact, you are going to have to use a degree of marketing skills, and you are going to have to learn how to utilize the power of social media in today's world. So I thought it was a really interesting insight into some of the challenges that she's had, especially around sexual health and well-being, and the benefits that she's seen with the work that she's done with those researchers. Finally, the third takeaway, and I guess I kind of touched on it a bit in the last one, is that dissemination is more than just a peer-reviewed publication. And I think, I can remember, when I did one of my first university papers back in University of New Brunswick, opening a paper journal that was like from the 80s, so it was like 10, 15 years old at the time, and being like absolutely shocked by how powerful that research was, and I thought that it was missing. And you hear these stories all the time, like where people are like, oh, I've got this brilliant idea, nobody is doing this. And then you go back into the history of that area and you're like, oh, wait a minute, somebody has. And there's this talk of it taking like 18 years for a positive research trial to potentially have impact in healthcare services. And I think we focus a lot, or in a lot of academic training, you focus a lot on getting that peer-reviewed publication out. And depending on the journal, they're now encouraging more dissemination activities. So video abstracts, visual abstracts, graphical abstracts, those sorts of things. And increasingly, journals are starting to do more social media activities. And again, it's probably because of my own bias and the feeds that I follow. But, I think of the European Journal of Cardiovascular Nursing as an exemplar out there for utilizing videos and social media content creation in order to try and increase the impact around the research that they're publishing. And it's great to see that a journal's doing that. But I think increasingly, researchers are attempting to do that as well. So it made me think, and it made me really curious to have this conversation with Abigail. And she's really made me think, as being like, actually, is that a skill that a researcher needs? Or is that a skill set that they should be welcoming in collaborations with people like Abigail, who are now becoming experts in the world of modern dissemination, of marketing techniques in order to better increase your impact? Like, do we need to do it all? Or should we actually be asking others to help us? So yeah, that's my third takeaway, is how can we maximize the dissemination of our research so that we increase the impact of that research? Is it marketing? Right. That's it for now. Oh, before I go, it hasn't been recorded yet at the time of recording, but I am going to get one of the researchers that she's been working with on, as well as a like super fast short episode, to just share a little bit more about the research that he's been doing around this wearable. So watch out for that one. It'll be a bit of a different episode because it's going to be a bit shorter. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, until then, keep listening and make sure you check out the episode description. There's loads of resources in there that Abigail has very kindly given, both her own research work that she did in her university degree in high school, so that you can kind of get a flavor for who she is and what she does. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep asking why.